Hey there, this is Jack with Real Deal Chat. And are you ready to unlock the secrets of maximizing your real estate income while solving the affordable housing crisis? Today, we're diving into the revolutionary approach that could change the way you think about property investment. In this episode, Katrina E. Robinson will show you how to transform a single family home into a high income co living space, the step by step process of managing shared housing, and the incredible success stories of those who've mastered this model. Whether you're a seasoned investor or just starting out, this is the insight you need to elevate your real estate game. Before we jump in, if you find value in this content, please give us a like and subscribe to stay updated with more transformative real estate strategies. Let's get started. Katrina Robinson joins me here today, and you can learn what she can help you with by heading over to grouphomeonautopilot.com. And there's an event coming April 24th and 25th, the Co-Living Business Conference. So you go to grouphomeonautopilot.com/CBC, in which you can take advantage of more information there, as well as buy your tickets for that event. I think the conference name says it all. We're going to be talking about co-living, group homes, that type of thing here today. I really appreciate your time here today, Katrina.
Thank you so much for having me, Jack. I appreciate it.
So I saw you even have quite a few different brands going on. One of them is Round Table Living. Can you talk a little bit about what you're trying to solve with this program?
Yes. So I have three co-living homes. I call them group homes, but the terms are kind of thrown around interchangeably: group home, co-living home, independent living home. It's basically shared housing. So I've got three residential houses that are in San Antonio, Texas. And instead of renting out the entire house to a family or to a single person, I rent out the house by the room or by the bed. So I have shared rooms and I have private rooms available. And it's at a discounted price to people. Because of the affordable housing crisis, a lot of people who are single can't find a place that they can afford to live in. So it solves the affordable housing crisis, but it also 10x's my income, because if I were to take that same single family home and rent it out to one person, I'm looking at a profit of around $200 to $300. But if I take that same house and split it up and put two beds in each room and rent it out to people who are on fixed incomes, like on SSI or SSDI, or just people who are working, but they might be working a job at the grocery store where they're not making a lot of money, then once I rent it out by the bed, now I'm making 10 times as much money as the real estate investor. So it's solving a problem for me. It's maximizing my income on that property, but it's also solving a need for the city of San Antonio, where it's providing affordable housing options to people in need.
Yeah, so when you say group home, I guess I automatically, my mind goes elsewhere, where you might be providing services for people who are recovering from alcohol, drug, that type of abuse, and then they're trying to get their feet under them. But are you talking about basically, well, you're talking about something else.
Yes, I'm just talking about shared housing. So there are group homes that provide services, though. So actually, in 2025, this legally defined group home. And so since 2025, what I have are not group homes at all. I've been calling them group homes for years, but they're not group homes. They're just co-living homes. When you have a group home in Texas, you're providing some kind of service, some kind of personal care service, a non-medical service. When you get into the medical services, that's where you get into assisted living. So what I have is basically just shared housing. And also, when you have a group home that's providing services, those homes have to be licensed. What I provide is unlicensed shared housing. So they're independent living homes, shared living homes, co-living homes, group homes. They're all kind of thrown around interchangeably now.
Sure. Yeah, I've seen this type of model a couple times, but primarily, like I said, in the recovery type space or the student housing type space.
Hmm.
And I think I've talked to one other person who caters towards like professionals, where like traveling
Yes.
nurses and the like. Are you trying? But you're focused on affordable housing.
Yes. So I actually coach people now on how to open their own co living homes. And there are so many different demographics that you could target. So I have some clients, coaching clients, who want to target only working professionals. And so they generally do private rooms. So it's all private rooms, and the people who live there share the common areas, and that's it. But then there are people like me who target affordable housing. So I'm reaching out to caseworkers and social workers and people who have direct access to people in need of affordable housing because they're receiving some kind of government assistance like SSI or SSDI. Then there are people who want to house just young adults who have aged out of the foster care system. And that's also an affordable housing option, but it's for a specific demographic. And then there are people who do like travel nurses and students. And there's so many different demographics that all fall under the umbrella of co-living or shared housing.
Well, can we talk a little bit about the process associated with this? Maybe particularly around the property management. You got these individuals moving in. There's
Mhm.
likely dynamics in the home. You got other people already living there. Could you walk us through the process of selecting or that person selecting your property as a good fit? But then I would
Yes.
imagine that you have to have some triggers in place to make sure that vice versa too, that the people that are
Yes.
going to be living with them find it okay as well.
Absolutely. So we have a very detailed intake process that we use, and we have certain caseworkers and organizations that we partner with so that we get the right people in the homes. So I've got, like I said, 3 different homes, and I have different demographics at each home. So there are certain people who would be a better fit for my first house, and certain people that would be a better fit for my third house, etc. So we go through a very detailed intake questionnaire on the phone with the person who is potentially going to be a resident of the house to make sure that they have the type of personality and background that's going to fit into the house, and also that they're going to be able to make their monthly payment for their rent. So we do have an intake questionnaire, and then that's something else that I train other people on now is how to vet these people who you're going to place. Some group home operators or co-living operators do background checks and only take certain types of people in their homes. And then some don't do background checks. We do background checks, but it's only because my operations manager, who I ended up hiring after I opened my second home, my operations manager has a lot of property management background and has a subscription to do background checks. So he does background checks. But I don't hold it against anyone if they have a background with felony convictions or anything like that, because that's the type of demographic that I house. I house reentry and people with mild disabilities that can still take care of their own activities of daily living. Because if they can't take care of their own activities of daily living, then they need to be in a place that has a licensed facility to provide that care. So I only take people who are independent, and I do take people who have felony convictions on their records and evictions on their records in my first home. But the only people I don't take are registered sex offenders. There are homes that are just for registered sex offenders. I just don't have any of those homes.
Could you talk a little bit about like what you experienced then? You establish a buy box. You're trying to find houses that are substantial in size, I would imagine. I kind of picture you're probably the
The
ideal
bigger, the
buyer
better.
of like that 4 bedroom or a bigger house to accommodate various individuals. Like, do you receive any pushback from the neighborhood? Like, there's requirements associated with establish these in different neighborhoods. Like, how does that piece of it look?
Mhm. It's a great question. So, yes, the bigger the house, the better for this type of business. And I tell all of my coaching clients they need to get at least a 4 bedroom house so that they can maximize their profit. One of my homes is a 3 bedroom, and it works out beautifully. It's just 3 private rooms. They're all senior citizens. It doesn't give me any problems at all, but that house is just their rents are paying my mortgage for the house. It's not really making me the money that I'm looking for in a co-living business. So I do recommend at least 4 bedrooms, at least 2 bathrooms. I try to keep the bathroom ratio at 4 people to 1 bathroom max. That's what I like to keep, but there's no law against having more people use a bathroom. And then also close to public transportation. That's one of the things that I do recommend is close to public transportation. And depending on the demographic of the people that you're housing, you might need to have enough space for people to park. So, for example, if you're going to house working professionals, those are people with cars. So they need places to park. If you're buying a house that has a lot of land where you could pour a cement pad and have space for them to park, that's amazing. But for my people who I house, my demographic, of the 28 beds that I have, two of them have cars because that's the demographic that I house. So I don't have to worry about the parking situation. And then I also recommend no homeowners association. So when you're getting this into these properties and turning them into co-living, you don't want to deal with the headaches of a homeowners association because they could complain about anything. They could complain that there's more than three unrelated people under one roof. I don't like the number of people that are going in and out of her house over there, or the number of cars that she's got parked in the front, or whatever. So I just recommend no HOA. And it's not because this business is illegal, it's because the HOA will just give you a hard time. Now, if you do end up having to go to court because of the more than three unrelated people under one roof, in most circumstances, the co living operator will win in court because most of the time, the people that we house are protected by federal law. We're protected by the Fair Housing Act. So the homeowners association won't win, but I just recommend not even getting into that headache at all and just finding a house that's not in an HOA, plenty of parking if that's the type of people that you're going to house, at least 4 bedrooms, and keep the lawn cut, maintain your house, make it nice. Don't make it something that the neighborhood is upset about. Make your house a nice looking house. And another thing that people don't think about is make it a house rule not to loiter in the front. They can hang out in the back. Don't have a bunch of strange looking guys out front smoking cigarettes. Have them all hang out in the back. So those are the
Mm.
types of things that I look for in a house.
Yeah, you brought this up now. You establish house rules, everybody kind of gets on board, and I suppose when you have that many people living in a house, they're kind of self-policing to a certain extent. You got other people that are going to want to keep things in line.
Yes. So that's something that actually one of my clients just asked me yesterday. Well, how do we make sure that everybody is keeping up with their chores and that they're all following the house rules? Well, you might have one bad apple. You might have somebody in the house that's not doing what they're supposed to do, but the house the other people in the house police themselves. So they will tell the other people in the house want to have a nice, peaceful living environment. And so if somebody in the house is violating that, they will make it known. They will tell. Now, initially, I was the operations manager. I was doing everything myself. But now I've hired an operations manager because I live in Los Angeles and my homes are all in San Antonio. So I hired an operations manager so that he could be the boots on the ground and also be the one dealing directly with the residents. Thankfully, I don't deal with any of the resident conflicts anymore. My operations manager deals with all of that. But if he comes across something that he needs my intervention on, then he reaches out to me and then I get involved.
Yeah, whenever you have people, there's always going to be drama. So I was going to ask you how you handle that.
Yes, I could write a book on the stories, the things that I have run across in my homes, especially with the demographic that I house. I have had a guy who moved in who was he was living under a bridge. He was living under a bridge, and then he went to a church who was helping him out. And then the church decided they wanted to help pay for housing for him somewhere, and they found me. So they brought him to me. The restroom was right next door to his room, but he was so used to peeing in bottles that he was peeing in bottles in his room and keeping the bottles lined up along the wall. So that's the type of thing that you don't know that you're going to run into that sort of situation, but we did. And we just had to let him know, hey, this is unacceptable in the house. You got to use the bathroom. Now, that's not the type of thing you're going to run into if you're housing travel nurses.
So, well, talk about the accommodations. Do you find that you have to provide extra? Like, how much do you furnish the house ahead of time? Like, what about that piece of it?
Mhm. I have a list of furnishings and supplies that I recommend for every house. For example, metal bed frames are better than wood bed frames. So I do provide a bed, dresser, and a nightstand, and also underbed storage for all of my residents. And then the common areas are furnished as well. and no outside furniture.
So, how about like internet, television? Like,
Mhm.
do you furnish the living room? Like, what? How about the kitchen? What's all of that look like?
Yes. So it's kind of like when you go to an extended stay hotel, how there's stuff in the kitchen, there's supplies already for you in the kitchen, or an Airbnb. So the kitchen is fully stocked. There are pots and pans and silverware and glasses. Everything that you need is there in the kitchen. And the bedrooms are furnished. It's not a bunch of extra furniture, but they are furnished. And then the common areas are fully furnished. So TV, coffee table, couch, the dining room, everything is fully furnished. And also, the rent that the people pay per bed includes all utilities. So it includes their water, internet, electricity. And as far as keeping the electricity costs level, we do put a lockbox on the AC and we keep it at a comfortable level. So that's another way of reducing your costs because you don't want people messing with the thermostat all day long. So there are a lot of things, small things that you wouldn't think of, like the lockbox on the AC, that it's important to get help from someone. If you're a real estate investor and you're trying to pivot into this co-living model to maximize your income, it's important that you get mentorship because you want to learn from people like me who have already gone through the bumps and bruises and learned the hard way of the things that you need to put in place.
Just to remind everybody, we're talking to Katrina E. Robinson. You can learn more by heading over to grouphomenonautopilot.com/CBC to take advantage of the co-living business conference if you want to learn. I'm sure that's like drinking from a fire hose. Head to the conference there of April 24th and 25th. If you found some value in what we're chatting about so far, do us a quick favor, share this with one of your friends. And if you're watching us on YouTube, give us a like and subscribe. So,
Thank
one
you.
of the things that you brought up is the return on investment here. Like, this is probably what's going to attract most people because you're absolutely right. A single family home, a lot of people are, it's not uncommon to you see cash flow of $200-300 a month if you're
Right.
lucky, and then you have an appliance go out and then that blows the whole cash flow for the year. Could
Right.
you talk a little bit, get into the numbers here? How does this work
Sure.
and how does it scale?
Sure, I would love to. So I'll give you a real world example. I took a four-bedroom home, and that four-bedroom home, the mortgage on it was 1800. Now, these numbers might be low for nowadays, but this is what it was. It was 1800. In some areas of the country, it's still 1800 for a four-bedroom house. And so I was charging someone $2,000 a month to live in that house. So my net was $200. So I took that same four-bedroom house and put two beds in each room and then marketed to caseworkers and social workers, hey, I've got this affordable housing option, and it's $600 a month per bed. So $600 a month per bed, 600 times 8 beds now, because I've put two beds in each room. That amount is 4,800. So 4,800 gross. Subtract that 1,800 that's my mortgage. And the profit on that is $3,000. So $3,000 profit, but you are paying for the utilities. So let's subtract 1,000. Let's subtract 1,000 because of internet, water, and electricity with that number of people in the house, $1,000. So your net is $2,000 now on that house versus $200 before. So that's 10xing your income right there. Now you take that model and do it over and over again, and you're easily making, you can make $10,000 a month on these homes.
Hmm. Hmm. Sometimes everything sounds, when we're real estate investors, everything sounds either too good to be true, or we just kind of only see the good aspects of things. Give us the nitty gritty here. Like, what's the bad side of this beautiful gold coin?
There are a lot of, you have to have a lot of resiliency. You can't let things get to you. So when you're dealing with a lot of different people under one roof, of course there's the drama like you mentioned. There are conflicts with roommates. So you have to be able to handle those things with a level head. If you're not able to do that, you don't have that type of personality, then this business is not for you. But most real estate investors, I think, are okay with risk in general. Real estate investors are okay with risk. So if you're willing to take on that risk, this is definitely something to get into. And if you don't have the personality for that, you can always hire help. There are people out there who will be your operations manager, and you just decide on how much you're going to pay them to manage the house for you.
We've already kind of touched on the dynamics of the house, but what type of systems do you use to manage all of this? You mentioned you have a person that's kind of your operations manager, but there must be something to keep track of everything here. And do you have
Yes.
like a year-long commitment from these your renters? Like how does that piece look?
I don't. I do month to month leases because I have people who are transitioning from homelessness into something more solid. But I also, even though I have month to month leases, I've got a guy who's been with me for 5 years on a month to month lease. So I don't like most transitional housing, there's a limit on how long you can stay there. With my transitional housing, you can stay as long as you want, but I do have month to month leases. Now, if you're less into risk than I am, then you might want to do longer term leases. That might make people feel more comfortable in knowing that they have this consistent income that's going to come. But as far as a management system, I highly recommend Rent Ready. I use Rent Ready, which is my tenant management system that I subscribe to. I know there are a lot of tenant management systems out there, but Rent Ready is the one that I choose to use to manage all of my renters. And also, you can send out notifications in there. You can automate the rent reminders. And also, my residents can sign up for auto pay in there. So when they pay their rent, I automatically get the money to my bank account right away. So I love Rent Ready.
So when you dived into this, you mentioned you highly recommend people getting some sort of coaching or mentorship before getting into this. You said that as if you learned that lesson the hard way. Could you talk a little bit about what might have happened or what makes you say that?
I have so many horror stories. There's actually, I was on another podcast just to talk about my biggest horror story in group home management. And I'll summarize it. So I had a little old lady who came and she showed up a few days before she was supposed to show up for the intake. We did the tour of the house. She liked the house. And we decided on, let's say you're going to move in on June 1st to the house. Well, she showed up May 20th. And my operations manager has a soft heart. And he's like, you know what? Let's just let her in. You will take care of the payment and everything in a couple days. And we'll have her sign the lease then. She came in and just started wreaking havoc in the house. I mean, just mentally just off, was threatening people with a knife. And then when she left the house at one point, I said, you know what, just take her coat out of the door. She can't come back. She cannot come back in the house. So she called the police. The police came. They're like, you have to let her back in. I said, no, I will not because she's threatening my other residents. And they said, well, you have to go through eviction. I said, that's fine. I will, but I'm not letting her back in the house. So she reaches in her bag and she grabs out a hammer and she proceeds to smash out the front windows of the house. And so that was the biggest horror story. Now, it didn't cost that much to get the windows replaced, and we eventually went to eviction court. That is a really short version of the story. She was horrible. She stayed on my front porch for days. I got threatened with elder abuse because I wouldn't let her back in the house. At one point, I had to relocate other people who were in the house and put them at, thankfully I had a couple vacancies at one of my other homes. So I put them in the other house because they were afraid of her. And then one person I actually put in a hotel room. So it was just a whole saga and it was horrible. But the lesson learned though is make sure that people sign a lease before they spend a night. Make sure they sign a lease, which is basic, but it was emotion was involved. It was an old lady.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, you probably have already also seen the other side of that, where helping these individuals, especially coming from homelessness, and seeing them excel and move on, that might be actually quite rewarding. Do you have a good story in that regard?
Yes, it's so rewarding. I had a guy named Sylvester who was sleeping on a park bench, and he went to a homeless shelter, and the homeless shelter helped him to apply for the benefits that he earned. He had benefits. He had SSI. So he started receiving his SSI. He came to my house and stayed with me. He got himself on his feet. He was so happy to be in our house and just so grateful and treated the house just like his own. And he ended up moving on to his own apartment.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yes.
Talk about a success story with one of your students. Like maybe they were struggling to try to find their path in real estate investing, and then when they found your program and this asset class, now they've excelled and maybe
Yes, I
grown.
have.
It's always crazy. We've trained some people locally here now, and they're likely beyond what we ever did.
Right. Exactly. So I have several. I have several success stories. Most of them are camera shy, so they're not on my YouTube channel, but I do have a couple of them who are on my YouTube channel. And one of them is Kenya. Kenya is in Baltimore, and she came into my program, didn't know anything about co-living, had heard about it, was interested in it, but she was very motivated, and she did not have a property. But I explained to her that you can do this business by renting out a property from someone else as long as you have the permission to sublease the property to others. So it's a 6-week coaching program. By week 3, she got the keys to her rental home because I give you the landlord pitch script so you know exactly what to say to landlords to get them to rent to you and allow you to sublease the house to others. So, week 3, she got the keys to her rental. Week 6, she had her open house event. She followed everything to the T that I told her to do. Week 6, she had her open house event. And at her open house event, she filled 5 of her 9 beds. She went on to fill the rest of the beds over time, not a long time. She went to fill the rest of the beds. And then 5 months later, she is now on to opening house number 2 and 3.
They're moving really fast.
Yes, you can definitely move fast as long as you dedicate the time and the effort to this business. When people sign on for coaching with me, I call it an intensive program for a reason. It's a 6-week intensive, and I ask that they dedicate 10 to 20 hours per week in the setup phase of this business. Once they've set it up and they have all of their operations in place and they follow all of my standard operating procedures, templates, scripts, and routines, and all of that, this business does not take as much time to run. But during the setup phase, I do want them to dedicate at least 10 to 20 hours a week in the setting up.
I just wanted to call out what you just said there regarding SOPs, because in many cases, when I've had any kind of assistance in getting mentorship myself, that's where I really saw a lot of value. And maybe that's just the nerd in me that I really like having that step by step process. And I almost see it as like buying into a franchise, if you will. Like,
Yeah.
why change the wheel if it's working for somebody else? Follow the step by steps that's laid out in front of you. I appreciate you bringing that up.
Absolutely. Yes. And that's because I have military background. I was in the Air Force for 6 years and everything was SOPs. So I have SOPs for everything. And also, like you said, when you have a step by step, now you can take that process and then just duplicate it. You duplicate it for house number 2, number 3, and on to house number 16. So that's why I teach SOPs. And also, when people sign on for my coaching program, they get lifetime access to all of my video modules and the digital workbook, which includes all the SOPs. So if somebody opens house number 1 and then 3 years later, they decide, you know what, I want to open this up again, but I don't remember the steps to take, they can always go back and watch the videos and they have access to the SOPs.
Well, Katrina, this is just fantastic. I really appreciate you talking about this asset class. Before we jump into the rapid fire and start closing out this episode, is there anything else we should have tried to hit on? I feel like we might have missed something here.
No, just that my group homes are Roundtable Living. Those are my group homes. So it's roundtableliving.com. If anyone is interested in affordable housing in San Antonio, I do have beds available periodically throughout the year. I've got vacancies that happen. And then my group home coaching for people who are interested in opening their own co-living properties, that is grouphomeonautopilot.com. So if people are interested, real estate investors want to pivot to this type of business, they should go to grouphomeonautopilot.com and enter their email address and phone number, and I will contact them and we can get started with the coaching.
And if you want to head to the conference, go to grouphomeonautopilot.com/CBC for the Co-Living Business Conference, April 24th through the 25th. I'm going to have clickable links in the show notes to make it easy for everybody to find these resources. But if you're ready, Katrina, we're going to jump into the rapid fire and close out this episode. What lie do real estate investors often tell themselves?
The lie is that you have to have multiple properties to have multiple doors. What I've done is basically taken one residential home and now I have multiple doors under that roof. So I've got 3 properties, but I have 28 doors because I have 28 beds total. So that's the biggest lie, is that you can't maximize this. There are always creative ways to maximize this.
Yeah. And we can probably have you come back on and talk about this because now you just spurred another idea. A question for me is that I'd be curious as to how you market these. You already mentioned talking to social workers and a few of those type of things. So it sounds like there's quite a bit of networking in your world, but there's
Yes.
probably a number of other ways you're attracting these residents.
Oh, there are so many ways. In my program, I give 101 ways to market your properties. And actually, at the Co Living Business Conference, we have a representative from Pad Split who's coming. Have you heard of Pad Split? It's kind of like
Yep, I sure have.
Airbnb, but it's for co living. Yes, so that's another way to market your beds. Is there's Pad Split, there's Spare Room, Roomies, Roomster. There's so many. There's one called Digs. There's so many places online now where you can post your co living opportunities.
If you could go back in time and give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
It would be to not sell everything. I started buying properties when I was 21 because I was in the military and I had the VA loan. So I would move somewhere, buy a house, sell it, move somewhere, buy a house, sell it. If I had kept all of those homes, oh my gosh, I don't know what my net worth would be. I don't even want to know. I don't want to know what it would be if I had kept all those homes and just rented them out. I was just too scared. I was too scared to rent it out. Just the what ifs. What if I don't find somebody to rent it and all these things?
Do you have a book recommendation or what are you reading right now?
Yes, right now, well, I'll go into my favorite book. My favorite book is The 4-Hour Work Week. I just love how Tim Ferriss goes into optimizing everything about his life. And that's the book that made me start thinking creatively about what a life could look like and how you can basically reframe your thinking and start thinking about how to optimize different things and how to put things on autopilot. So that's my favorite book.
Yeah, I got it over my shoulder. And then finally, what single process or tool have you implemented that has had the biggest time saving impact?
The biggest time saving impact is using a tenant management system, Rent Ready. It doesn't have to be Rent Ready, but that's the one I recommend. And that's been the biggest time saver for me.
Yeah, you've brought that up a couple times now. I've been asked to re-review it. I have a review on one of my other channel regarding Rent Ready, and they asked just recently if I would mind updating my review. So I guess I'm going to give it
Uh-oh, was
another
it a
try.
bad review?
I found some holes in it. So and I wouldn't say it was a bad review. In fact, I
Okay.
used Rent Ready for a couple of years, and then there was a couple things as you're keeping adding rentals, it there were just some things that I needed it to do in addition.
Mm,
And I think
okay.
since then now they've likely have had added. You've
They've
mentioned,
added a lot.
yeah.
They
One
have.
of them
There's
was
even a
being
chat
able to
function.
communicate with the residents. When
Yes.
I was using it, there wasn't a way to do mass blasts, so I would end up
Oh,
using a different software for that. So yeah.
okay. Yeah,
So
they've
and I
added
believe
so
that's
much. You can
that's a
even
pretty
do
significant.
maintenance requests.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can do maintenance requests in there. They've added so much.
Yeah. So it's probably time to revisit it. So we'll
Yes.
give it another go. I really
Okay.
appreciate your time again, Katrina. Again, you can find more information and take advantage of heading to the Co-Living Business Conference by heading over to Group Home on autopilot.com/CBC. Clickable link in the show notes. Really appreciate your time, and it was great to meet you.
Nice to meet you too, Jack. Thank you.